Most people believe a leader falls when something outside them collapses, like a market or a scandal that finally catches up, but they're wrong. The most dangerous failure is quieter. It happens in a room where no one argues to a person who has stopped asking questions. I call this the infallibility trap. Picture an airtight chamber. Every time the leader answers a question, a little oxygen leaves the room. Every time they reassure the team, the walls seal in just a little more. And the higher a leader climbs, the fewer people are willing to tell them how little air is left. In my last video, I showed you how other people contaminate you from the outside, furthering your isolation. But that's only half of the trap. The other half is what power does to your mind, and it's the half that no one named. In this video, I will show you 3 signs of a leader who has sealed themselves in, why a smart person doubles down on a failing decision instead of admitting it, and the one difference between a leader who suffocates and a leader who learns to breathe. If you have ever felt like the only person in the room who isn't allowed to be wrong, this is for you. Let's start by looking at what power does to your mind first. The clinical literature calls it hubris. David Owenson and Jonathan Davidson published a study in which they analyzed US presidents and British prime ministers. They found a measurable cluster of personality features that appeared only once a person held power for years, with almost no constraints. The crucial detail is that hubris fades once the power fades. So the condition is acquired, meaning the office changed the occupant. Here's the distinction. It's what separates the infallibility trap from just another word for arrogance. Hubris is what happens to the mind, so power distorts it. The infallibility trap is what that distorted mind then does. Think of hubris as the diagnosis and the trap as the symptom that kills. But here's what no one tells you. The trap doesn't snapshot at the moment you make a mistake. It snapshots the moment the leader stops asking. So then, what does it look like from the outside? There are 3 signs, and each one seals the chamber a little more. The first is the certainty seal. The leader's first answer becomes the only answer. Not because it's right, but because questioning it reads as disloyalty. So doubt gets relabeled as betrayal. The second is the warning vacuum. People stop delivering bad news, not because the news changes, but because the cost of delivering it becomes way too high. You stop hearing what's actually happening, and in place of it, you hear a carefully edited version of what people think you want to hear. The third is the blame redirect. When something does go wrong, it's never the decision. It's the market, economy, timing, rival, anything but the call made by the leadership. A leader can fall into all 3 without being a bad person. They can be decent, hardworking, and be sure that they're doing the right thing. The infallibility trap doesn't care how good your intentions are. It only cares that you have stopped letting the truth in. But knowing the signs doesn't answer the harder question. Why would a person keep digging once things start going wrong? That's where it gets uncomfortable. There's a well-documented bias called the escalation of commitment. The research comes from Barry Shaw, and a study by Kong and Wong looks deeper into the bias. When a decision maker gets negative feedback on something they have already sunk money, time, and effort into, the rational response is to pull back. But that's not what happens. They tend to keep going. Often, they pour in more, especially when they were the ones who made the original call. The leader doesn't double down because they're confident. Usually they double down because admitting the error costs more than persisting with it. The more they have put in, the stronger the case for putting in more. Every answer, reassurance, and every "we have got this" moment removes a little more air until the leader suffocates on their own certainty. This becomes most evident when crossing cultural boundaries, as the trap doesn't look the same everywhere. In the West, especially at the top, admitting you don't know comes off as a weakness. A leader in a high position can't openly say, "I don't know," without repercussions, at least most of the time, so they stop saying it. In turn, the leader seals themselves in and is expected to know all the answers. In the East, so in countries like Japan and China, humility is expected. It's part of the culture. A leader is supposed to be humble, but the trap is still there. In a high-powered distance culture, subordinates can't contradict the superior to preserve harmony and to protect the leader's space. So the leader can ask for feedback and information and still never hear the truth. In the West, the leader builds the prison. In the East, the room builds it around them. So if the chamber is sealed in every culture, what does the escape look like? You would expect the answer to be the opposite of certainty, so humility. And there has been research conducted on intellectual humility. Porter, El-Nakuri, and their colleagues defined intellectual humility as recognizing that there are gaps in one's knowledge and that one's current beliefs might be incorrect. According to their research, intellectually humble leaders aren't softer, but better liked. They make more thorough and well-informed decisions. In the studies, people who hold their beliefs loosely end up more effective. But there's a catch, and the research is blunt about it. People show less intellectual humility when the stakes are high. When a core conviction is challenged or when reputation is on the line, the instinct is to hold on and seek out the evidence that confirms what you already believe. I'm not going to tell you that the leader who learns humility steps out of the chamber into open air. That would be a lie, and it would be an insult to the reality of your position. The researchers do mention this towards the end of their paper. They write, "In moments that require decisive action, focusing on one's fallibility and limit of knowledge might not be the best strategy. Individuals might be able to embrace intellectual humility only to the extent that institutions validate and support it." I searched for research papers that examined when intellectual humility becomes a liability, but I couldn't find any. The research stops where the genuine problem starts, and that gap is why I made this video. So then, what do you do to bridge this gap? The researchers just told us the answer. Humility only survives if the institution builds a place for it. And this is how institutions can build a place for it. First is to reframe doubt as rigor. A leader can't say, "I'm not sure," but they can say, "We haven't tested this yet." It's the same information, but it gives the opposite signal. "I don't know" is weakness. "We haven't run the preemptive risk analysis" is thoroughness. Second is inversion. Instead of confessing uncertainty, ask, "What am I missing?" It reads as someone who has already considered everything and is now auditing what's left. It performs the same function as "I don't know" while signaling control. Third is to build the doubt into the structure. This is the deepest fix because it removes the need for the leader to raise doubt. Assume the plan has already failed and work backwards. Appoint a red team whose job is to identify what could go wrong and develop strategies. Create an anonymous channel where bad news can reach you without names attached. This way, the leader never has to expose vulnerability because the system surfaces the doubt for them. Fourth is to commission skepticism. Appoint a designated devil's advocate. This way, the leader can purposely endorse dissent without personally owning the doubt. You preserve the posture and still let the air back in. Here's the final verdict of the mirror. The leader who survives is the one who accepts a narrower tube than anyone else. They don't get to escape the chamber and have to learn to breathe through less air. Confidence and doubt aren't opposites. Confidence is the reward you earn for surviving doubt. Focus on fixing the room instead of the person, and you will let enough air back in to keep thinking clearly. In my next video, I will be covering the savior complex in leadership, why high-capable executives destroy their bandwidth by overfunctioning for underperforming teams, and the psychology boundary required to stop treating every crisis around you as your personal failure. I will see you then.